Thank you, and welcome to the largest town hall meeting in the United States. We are what they call the left. I often start out with a nod toward Internal Revenue Service because we can't be partisan. So I want to welcome Greens, Socialists, Democrats, young, old, students, faculty, white, black, Anglo, Hispanics, even the Irish, and yes, particularly Republicans, so that we can see that we're balanced in our approach to the various issues we're going to be talking about.
Tom Harkin is a fighting liberal, and that's the only kind of liberal we need right now. Here's Tom Harkin.
Asked me about, is this important to get people together like this? I said, yeah, you know, because a lot of us that are in the progressive movement, you know, we're not paid to do these kinds of things, you know. We have our lives to live and our jobs to do and our kids to raise and our families to take care of, and we're out there doing things in our communities and stuff. And I said, it's extremely important to get together in a gathering like this every so often, to connect with one another, to support one another, to encourage one another, and to let you know and let each one of us know that we got allies all over this country in the progressive movement. So thank you, Ed Garvey, for providing us with this opportunity. I've always been a fan of Jeff Foxworthy's, you know, you might be a redneck jokes. You've heard those, right? You might be a redneck if you keep a can of Raid on your dining room table, that kind of stuff. Well, after listening all summer to the Republicans' demagoguery and health reform, I think it's time for a new set of these. You might be a Republican like this. You know, you might be a Republican if you stand up at a town hall meeting and shout, "Keep your government hands off my Medicare." You might be a Republican if you believe that the government is always incompetent, wasteful, and stupid. But on the other hand, we can't have a public option in healthcare because it would outcompete all the private plans and run them out of business. You might be a Republican if you know that health insurance companies employ whole armies of adjusters to deny claims and stiff policyholders. But you're against reform because you don't want a bureaucrat standing between your doctor and the patient. You might be a Republican if you oppose President Obama's, quote, evil plan to keep people healthy, but you support the GOP alternative plan, which is summed up in 5 words: pray you don't get sick.
I am proud to introduce Bernie Sanders.
One of the reasons that I'm here this morning is I happen to believe that events like this are extremely important. And they're important because it is imperative that we never forget the history of our country, a history which sometimes the corporate media forgets to tell us about. It is a history of extraordinarily brave people who over the years have put their lives on the line and sometimes given their lives in the fight for justice, in the fight to abolish slavery, in the fight for civil rights, in the fight for women's rights and the ending of treating women as second-class citizens, of the fight that's going on today, as we've just heard. The right to make sure that we end all prejudices against people because of their sexual orientation. So people have struggled and are struggling. And that's a history, that is a history that is as relevant to us today as it was then. And obviously, when we look back at some of the giants in our country's history, people who fought for peace, fought for social justice, fighting Bob LaFollette comes to mind, and you should be very proud of what he accomplished and the lessons that he gave us, not only in terms of public policy, but in how to win.
And I'd like to bring up at this time Jeremy Scahill. Jeremy?
President Obama continues on the path that the Bush administration laid out in the immediate aftermath of 9/11. Well, you could say that it was laid out before that with the Project for a New American Century and their vision for a remaking of the maps in the Middle East and the reorganizing of the priorities around the world and borders, etc. But Obama is not only continuing with an escalation of the war in Afghanistan, but also is sustaining the occupation of Iraq. And in both cases, he's continuing a radical privatization agenda that began under Clinton and George H.W. Bush, and then was put on steroids under President Bush and co-President Cheney. And what we are seeing right now is a reality where there are about 500,000 U.S.-funded personnel operating in Iraq, Afghanistan, and in some other countries in a support capacity for those two wars. And of those 500,000 personnel that are on the U.S. government payroll, a full 50% of them are private contractors, as they're called. Now, I have an uncle who's a contractor, and he does construction. That's what I normally think of when I think of a contractor. Somehow, the language has been twisted and changed so that mercenaries are now referred to as contractors. In Afghanistan, for both the second and third quarters of this year, the Obama administration has increased dramatically the presence of armed contractors in Afghanistan, and they've also increased them in Iraq.
And please welcome McChesney and Nichols to talk about whether we can have a democracy without newspapers.
We started in 2002. We were told it wouldn't work. And we took on issues like media ownership. We took on issues like the Bush administration trying to illegally monitor public broadcasting content and do fake PR as news. We took on issues like slashes and cutbacks in public and community broadcasting funding. And most importantly, we took on the issue of network neutrality, keeping the phone and cable companies from having the right to censor what websites go over their systems and which websites don't.
The guy that helped us get it all started is one of the nicest people in all of politics, Jim Hightower.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ed Garvey. He was actually polite in the introduction. That's astonishing. Hello, Wisconsin. Good to be with you. What a joy. It just makes me happier than a red robin to come bobbing along here to Baraboo, Wisconsin for the annual Bob Fest blowout. And of course, I do come to you from Texas, no longer the state of Texas, though. Thanks to our Republican governor, who, by the way, puts the goober in gubernatorial. I'll leave you with this thought. It's from a great woman, Mary Ellen Lees, known as the Kansas Pythoness back in the 1870s, 1880s, because of the power of her tongue. She was a great populist orator, traveled all over the country, rallying hard-hit farmers who were being run over by the railroad monopolies and bankers of the day. And she said to them, corn farmers out in the prairie land, she said to them, it's time to raise less corn and more hell. Let's do that together. Thanks so much for what you're doing.